Okay, let's do a return to the spirit. Oh, it's an upside down return to the spirit. Woohoo! Okay, for this call, what card? Wow. Okay, assistance and knowledge with the violet flame on the bottom. So as Rosemary and I show up in our character costumes, we're going to talk about the major arcana. And we're also going to say, Rose, what are you?
I am me. I'm a Viking assassin warrior.
Wow. All right. Hitman, don't want to take a stand in front of you if there's a command to take my hands.
I'm celebrating Saturn's Day yesterday.
Oh, right, because this is a repeat costume.
Correct. And at the same time, it is in the costume as well.
It's aligned. So if you want to take a stand and turn around so that we can see you, I will say without any further ado that I am also just me because I was going to come on and say, hee hee. Oh, you made yourself cones for your breasts. That's great.
It is a breastplate of armor. Breastplate of armor.
Ah, yes. What about the armor of God? Is this anything connected to that nod?
Yes. We wear the armor of God. What we arm ourselves with is what our full spectrum light is, meaning that we can play in any color that we choose, whether that be purple, red, or brown, but we are not one defined piece because full spectrum light is all the colors in there. As it goes through a prism or prison, if people choose to separate, which is where you have the karma or duality when you see the separate colors and not the unity colors, which is the full spectrum light in all its glory. That is the armor of God.
The separate colors of each individuated expression of the whole that the spectrum represents, which is
Yes.
soul, heart, mind, body, and energy.
Yes.
Ultimately.
Energy are our emotions.
Yes.
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 So it
All
does.
required.
Mm-hmm. It does equate to that. So again, all of that combined, and then also again, so we have the tarot, and if you look at them as spectrums or paths that you are traversing, and we've often said that the Fool card in the beginning, which is 0, can also represent the end of the path, not just the beginning. Because at the beginning of the path, we find that we're starting off with nothing in us, that we are building as we continue to go. The magician puts the pieces together, the tools, and we continue down the path through shadow and such.
Yeah, because the magician's the number one after the fool is the 0.
Yes.
And then the number 2 is the priestess.
In a typical card, the symbolism on the card represents that which stands the unseen in between the two pillars of light and dark. Again, the unity that we're talking about, the intuitive side, source itself when it goes through. So as you progress through each stage of your knowledge, of gaining skill, of gaining experience when you go through that path, when you reach a point that you get to an end of that path, you have, I believe the world card is technically the last. The fool is actually replaced at the end of that. Because as you become to know the world, which is the individuals that are pieced together because you see the bigger picture and how each common thread is woven together in a tapestry, you begin to walk in a certain way that to other people you look like the fool. But for you, you know that when you close your eyes, even if you're blindfolded, no matter where you step, that path is going to manifest in front of your foot when you step down. There is a switch between duality between each card. It goes from masculine to feminine on each side, but then it also switches back to unity. So you have 3. So you have the Fool, which represents something that is actually full spectrum. You have the Priestess, which represents the divine feminine intuitive side. You have the Hierophant, again, Hiero, meaning of the sun, what you see now, not the unseen, represents the light part. So again, you dip back into duality. You go from one to the other. You go from the feminine to the masculine, feminine to the masculine. You go from light to dark, yin to yang, and then it does come back down. So it actually creates more of this, what looks like a string of pearls, right? Again, there's string of pearls. You have duality, unity, duality, unity, duality, like a breath in life. So the cards actually represent that as well between each path when you hit the card, 1, 2, 3, when you go up between the Fool. Then you have the feminine, which sits in between the pillars. Then you have the masculine, which is the Emperor. And the Emperor is often representative of, again, authority figure, right? That in the 3D world is what is being built, an empire, right? And then you have the next card, which that's the Hierophant. So then again, you go back to this in between the two pillars, but in a masculine sense in between the two pillars of what is actually source coming through, right? Source between the two pillars, the Hierophant, the sun, what we see. So a yang symbol. And then if it goes to the next card, which can be a feminine card in a way, but it is also the duality coming together. So we go back and forth again. Do you see how it goes? It goes from 0 and it goes to unity, then it goes to duality, then it goes back to unity.
Well, the Hierophant is between the pillars, whereas the lovers are the pillars.
Correct. They're the pillars. The lovers are the pillars in a 3D sense, because, but also an emotional sense. Whereas the pillars itself represent, like I said, duality in itself. And what is in between the pillars is usually what is unseen, but a vessel that is providing through source, right? An open vessel. So depending on the force or source that's coming through the vessel itself, if it has a filter on it, is how it is expressed in this world. If it's a pure vessel, it comes through as pure source.
Right. You can see that they are actually wearing the garb of a nobleman, or more specifically, of the priesthood. And then with the keys at the bottom or the flags that are crossed, then you see that at the bottom of the pillars is the church, which you described to be the hidden vessel that's working through the hosts.
The church in a way was, yes, it was in a way designed to do that. The church currently is part of a systematic way of projecting a truth, but a skewed truth in a way. Because we have to look at each, and I say have to, should look at each religion, each type of traditional space as holding an ounce of truth. And when we start to combine them, we get that. Again, each one is the cup. The cup is actually what is unconditional love, what you pour into the cup. So the keys, because keys are conditions of doors that need to be unlocked. Without those keys, when you open the doors to unlock them, you have no conditions, you have nothing blocking you. So you become a clear vessel.
Right. Well, if you're channeling someone else's belief systems and they're not your own and you're not allowed to question, the group will, even when your conscience says, no, don't go any further here. Our soul is on the line here. Don't do it. And you have to go anyway if you want to be in the show. What do you do?
That is when, as some would say, to put a mask on, but actually it's better to be your authentic self. You can dive into or sit next to into that system, but also remember that the light coming through you is there for a particular reason.
That's why I moved it to the chariot movement card, yes. Because moving away from what is fictitious is the reason I literally took my mask off as we get to the chariot.
Correct. It's being authentic, because you can go into any situations once you know yourself, know thyself, because you've healed thyself, healed the triggers that would push you into somebody else's belief system. Therefore, any situation that you are presented with, you already know that you are okay in that, because you are already knowing yourself in that.
Exactly. You know your inner strength.
Correct. Your inner strength is also, again, I believe that's also a Leo card. So that is also, the zodiac is actually woven into the major arcana as well. But your strength card is, and that reminds you of if some people are familiar with biblical verse, Daniel and the lion den, where the lions were starving and he was put down there thinking that he was going to get eaten, in which case he was not. So it was about strength of heart, strength of faith, but also, again, go back to the Fool card, is that no matter what situation you're going to be into, you already know what is going to manifest underneath your feet.
When you turn inward, you find those resources, the inner reserves of strength and power.
The Hermit is actually more indicative of this wizard card. You can see it quite often, but it is the inner searching, but also it is showing the light for others. That's why we has the little light there. But if you actually look at in the traditional card, if you look at the light at the lantern itself, it's actually a Merkaba in there
Mm.
inside that light. So it's basically lighting your energy body up. A lot of us go into hermit mode, meaning we go into this self introspection without worldly distractions on us so that we can find the light within ourselves and hold that out to others.
Mm-hmm.
But our purpose isn't to just hold that out to others, it's actually for us, for the path. Wheel of Fortune comes in, which again, no matter where we are on that Wheel of Fortune, whether fortunate or unfortunate, whether sine wave or cosine wave, the top of the bottom, depending on how you perceive the world, you can see it as duality, or you see the Wheel of Fortune as what it is. It is fortuneous, right? It is moving. If it's stagnant and set still, then we are stuck at the bottom or stuck at a top, in which case it's not anything that is moving, right?
Like the justice system that has been corrupted since the Justinian dynasty said Rome fell, but instead it was just the divorce of church and state, which is what we must reclamate through reclaiming our proper standing as men and women on common ground, where we can use our common sense that has become such uncommon practice for so many, that now it's time for us to see that the rationality of logic, reason, and science is not serving us if we are doing it at the expense of our intuition, which is the teacher our soul hired ahead of time to guide us through this life as us, the one and only.
This separation of church and state is actually separation between spirit and the physical. Mm-hmm. So as that was become a separation, a dividing stone, again, we went back into duality, which causes chaos, which causes karma. It causes, again, a system that is broken. So justice coming in, again, would be justice is blind, is it not? That is karma in itself.
Yes, that is karma itself. It served just as cold as ice when justice has been corrupted.
Yep. And again, karma comes, it does not dictate anything. It doesn't, as long as your intent is pure when you're doing something to put out there, it doesn't matter what somebody else does to you. The framework of justice and karma itself will always correct it. There's no need for an eye mentality, because then we ended up with a bunch of blind people, right? Yeah. It already corrects itself.
Intention is the intent ions. So where we're parked energetically as to where we're willing to send our ions in the quest of the question that allows us to stand as king asking the questions, which is why the judge who passes judgment of the mind, for you will find they have no jurisdiction over the heart or the hearth of the home. When we know how to kick Rome out of the home that we have known, or haven't actually, because our identities have invited countless entities in, which are what now need to be cleared.
You have the sacrifice of the hanged man, which is actually attributed to you. So we're going to go back even further than Rome, because a lot of the system, Rome was the one that actually split the church and state, become more 3D and more conquering type mentality. But if you go back previously to even Egyptian or Sumerian, the hanged man is actually attributed to the tree effigy, which is actually Bacchus, which actually ties into as he wore a crown of laurels or thorns. Now you have the Yeshua, but the tree effigy also represents that of the hanged man or the Osiris god, the fractured god, that was sacrificed and torn apart in fractured pieces of self, of identity, of source across the land. Again, a fracture. Whereas the hanged man, also as Odin, gained enlightenment from hanging upside down 9 days on Yggdrasil, the tree of knowledge, to gain ideas of runes, which is speech. So all of it's woven together right now, how we have this spoken spell. What we sacrifice, what we gain for that sacrifice. Don't actually have to be the martyr in this anymore either.
And the runes are actually symbols or signs that have syntax attached to them, which is the application of meaning to the sign, which is not the word that you'll find written beside it, because the word's not there. But when we see the sign, then we know that it is supposed to mean that, if we know the book. But if we don't, we can just have a look and then make our own interpretation. So the less you know can also work for us if we're willing to also recognize there is a book that's attached to every game. And if we don't know the game or the rules, then we're going to be claimed under the jurisdiction of the one who knows the rules and are then able to say they own you through the
Well,
agent.
once you understand that when you become unlimited in a way, again, as the force source goes through you, flows through you, as an unlimited, you understand that any tool and every tool is at your disposal because there is no actual rule. We understand what they're playing with, but we understand that we can play by different rules or rewrite different rules in a sense. The birth rules, the common law rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we go
Yes.
back to the position.
Which the magician is the first card. We didn't have this up, so I thought I'd just go back and show you where we started with the fool, who didn't know any of this, and now you do, so you're hearing this a second time, where the magician is actually the one who has all four suits of the pentacles, cups, swords, and wands available to him, and he stands with a conduit through which he is an extension of it, with the infinity flowing over him.
So ask yourself the question then, as the Fool card, if we take the Fool and put it at the end of the major arcana, and then you start again with the Magician, but now you have all the tools and the knowledge as the Fool because you have the faith now, the source, the actual spirit part integrated in and not separated out, as the Justice card, as we talked about, was separated between church and state. You have a whole different paradigm of which a new path is presented for you. You have now the knowledge of every tool that you can use. The hermit mode is for your own introspective, but it is actually for your own integration as well, as not something that is deemed as something horrible. Even the tower cards is not something horrible, because a tower card just simply means the ending of something else so that something else greater can be built.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a card to be celebrated, and many people are scared of that.
Of course. Yeah, we're always scared of the destruction of our self-image, so that the new self-image can replace that which was left behind to make room for this new idea of identity that we will take on as the EA of the each that our dreams are said to be when they come into this 3D reality after being in the 4D of the mind and the 5D of the heart.
Correct. And even the tower card, again, is indicative more of a 3D sense of things crumbling apart. And you get to the next card, which is the star, which again is more internal. It's the light Merkaba within, if you look how many points are on that star.
Right.
So again, we're talking about, it's another 8 there, I believe. You're talking about, again, the 8 symbol, infinity symbol, which is about the magician. You're talking about it in a sense of energy. The star is an energy card. It's the energy of what you have inside, as we are in a celestial computer that also reflects our 3D space. And the moon, which I believe is the next one, is talking about your emotional layer, right? What is in the underside of this? It is also a feminine card. It's a yin card as well, but it always has water in it because it's the emotional layer underneath. So what we integrate from our shadow, love your shadow, love yourself, know thyself, heal thyself, bring into the light, into the sun, into the 3D world. So then you sit there, self-reflection of judgment yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, and that is one of the funniest things, is that when people, we don't really have the ability to judge anyone else because we are not anyone else, right? We can only judge ourselves in whatever situation we are, that is knowing ourselves.
Right.
But once we judge somebody or judge anything, then we are therefore judging ourselves, because it's showing us that we're still in a belief system of some sort, that we are able to put a judgment or a condition on someone else.
Mm-hmm. Like I did to you when we were talking before you go to a masquerade party, and I just happened to have my wig and mask on the ready to do a little video about the insanity of wearing masks, and even the fact that I just learned that who is it? St. Thomas Aquinas is actually said to have been the patron saint of teachers, which is where the secular realm was created, I discovered. I just realized. I didn't know that. Did you?
A little bit of it.
Oh my goodness. These
And
are,
you said it's Aquinas, right?
huh?
His last name.
Aquinas. For like aqua.
Aquinas, Aquinas, but also what is that? I can't read it from here. My screen is too small.
Storm.
Storm, there you go, water. Storms. Cleansing storms, but storms that are, again, that's causing that are coming through. But Aquinas also, I believe, represents the zodiac, which is the eagle, is it not? So you're talking about Rome again. Faith.
Yeah. And this is the faith card and the purple of intuition as well, before the spectrum of colors, like what we have been talking about in the union of
Correct.
the old and new wisdom, to simplify it so that we are able to not just be sex kittens like what we can be when love is not used as the manifesting tool, that we become immune to commitment because of the lack of recognition for using our voice as the star seed that we are, that requires the violet flame clear the way for us to be able
Or
to say,
you could actually read that from a different point of view, even as that when you do use love, but the unconditional love to actually manifest into reality space, you can actually have this commitment to yourself in that sense, to have that faith to come through. And your violet flame is then what is activated as you become the clear vessel of the crown chakra. So you can go from both ways from that. You can either take it as a 3D point of view, as love as people as attachments, in a 3D sense, or the detachment of the unconditional love, which is not seen, but something that is completely felt in the 3D world, that actually gives you a whole new perspective on how you navigate in the world. So again, I go back to the zero fool. Is it the fool of the beginning or fool of the end?
hmm,
Either one.
right? I thought there were 22. Oh, yeah, because the Fool is the zero that also would be the 22nd card, essentially, because
Yes.
it's not numbered. So there we are, the Fool, the Magician, the High Priestess, the Empress, the Emperor, the Hierophant, the Hierophant, the Lovers, the Chariot, Strength, the Hermit. We're at 1 again with the Wheel of Fortune, 11 for Justice, or a 2, which is the other master numbers breakdown. The Hanged Man of the 3. For a number 4 for Death. We didn't,
which is time.
card.
So time, we could go through it real quick. So 4 is time. It's like the time is the illusion, right? So when we do deal with death, death isn't what we think it is. It is literally taking from one timeline and jumping into another of our fractured inner self, our fractured self, to integrate. So when we talk about death, it's really a transformation and rebirth.
Mm-hmm. Precisely. And this is actually also the thing we've got to see about death, in that anything that stops being present is no longer alive, because a life is living, whereas a life lived is deceased.
It is also, well, think of it as also a life lived is what, lived is devil backwards, right? Lived backwards is the devil. Life or live is to be evil backwards, right? But that's the temptation of the skin, the temptation of the 3D. So that when we disappear out of the 3D, when we vibrate somewhere else, or even we can do that as we are currently in our avatars, we actually transform and have a rebirth. That's the whole rebirth process. That's actually even the sacrifice, the 33 vertebrae with the Kundalini rising, when you sacrifice from the top to open the pineal gland after 33, master number, then you have gnosis. Then you have knowledge, you become a clear vessel. You're able to heal yourself. Different rebirth.
Yeah, well, I certainly didn't have temperance as a way of moderating myself when I first tuned into the energetic patterns and decided to make things happen, trying to do what we are now. But when I didn't have access to you or those who could actually help me see that the hero's journey is based off of the hero or the major arcana of the tarot.
It
Yeah.
is all a hero's journey. Yes, it's basically even described, which we call in the emerald tablets. Again, even the two pillars, the pillar of strength, the fiery flower of life, the halls of Amenti. They're all actually mentioned within there, and even the steps and keys to unlock on each aspect. So it is a journey within, but also knowing that you are manifesting your reality without, because outside of you, as you journey within, because we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. Once we see the world as it really is, then we have a moment of introspecting tower perspective, and then we have this moment of knowing that, okay, the only thing we control here is ourselves.
Yeah. So temperance is mastering moderation, which is becoming the master of self, which is the CELL-F of fear or faith, as to whether we will fill ourselves and our head with fear of false emotion appearing real that takes us out of the head and into the belly, where then we start feeling under the weather because the heart is no longer better because we're not giving it our power. We're putting the power into emotions we're having to keep pushed down so that we don't get distracted when they come up and mess up our crown.
Correct. It's know yourself and attune, become that crystal tuner. That's what we are. So
The
even have the devil card again, devil being lived, right?
Yeah.
The temptation. So even if the temptation's in our face, we can go, it's not required. And actually, when you reach and talking about crystalline bodies, you find that even eating food, which would be a 3D attribute, is something that doesn't require all the time. You begin to create your own energy within your body to feed you sustenance, which is actually, I think, considered manna within the Bible, manna being magic within any other realm. But again, the devil is the temptation, right?
I thought it was bread, but then there's the whole thing about bread and butter being how you earn your daily bread. And then you say it's mana, which you're saying is actually what?
Manna is magic, but it's also what was given to those that were wandering within the desert for 40 years, and they were fed manna from source, from God. So mana was basically the energetic of knowing ourself. If you think of even wandering lost within the desert, the hermit's journey, we're finding that within ourselves, we have the energetics to control our bodies because we control ourselves. So hunger, food, temptation, 3D from the outside no longer becomes a necessity then. And also with what we have systematically going on with a lot of the processed foods we see from the system, instead of being tempted by, yes, we can have that temptation, the addiction of the sugars or that which is in our food, but we can actually have the ability to go, we don't require this, just something basic. Or how busy do you get on your project that you don't actually eat? You don't have the meaning to, right? The feeling of it. So all of it is temptation. Think of all the parallels, the mirrors of the seven deadly sins: greed, lust, envy, right? Sloth, all of those. And we now see that as for what it is, and we can actually steer away from it.
So the devil we know is what we feel comfortable with until the tower comes and knocks us adrift through the seven of spiritual transformation that takes us to the infinity of the star that we came here because we are. The ones in the cycle of karma, which is a mark backwards. And when you said mana, I saw a name without the E at the end for a name. To see that we're not in control when we're being given mana instead of actually generating it from within ourselves as the life force that keeps ourselves sustained. We are able to remain whole and complete in and of ourselves if we can get our Merkaba strong enough to regenerate the cells. And then we step out of time in the construct that we have been bred into. So we become the ones that actually have fun being the sun, instead of just the one that is given a title of son by the parents we come from, and then pass judgment on us when we trust our fool's journey to know the world in a different way.
Going back to mana, a man, or Aman, or Amun, or Amen, which actually means truth, which is light's truth, that also parallels with the sun, the light, the star, again, Aman, right? Amen. It's often attributed to that, which actually is just an old word for truth. Truth as being the light that shines through you, your authenticity without the masks, as we started with masks on. So it doesn't matter what you dive into, as long as you know that what you are in the core, none of the masks actually matter.
Absolutely. But they could be a little fun as long as we know that we are one of the same, regardless of whether we have a different name, or we have the mask or the wig or the full costume. We are responsible for our choices, regardless of whether we are acting as something other than we are, or we're being authentically ourselves. So we're the conscience of ourselves, and we are also the conscience of the corpse that we work on behalf to empower.
Time to empower ourselves. Take that back and put it inside. And doesn't matter what costume we put on the outside, we are still authentically us.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you for taking your time to share your version of the major arcana with us. And I trust that people will want more. So we must get together again soon, and do it via Zoom, or we will invite others to join us and talk about these character arcs that everything is based off of. So let's not be so snarky and pretend we know it all.
Character arcs, not just arcs as in an arch, but an arc within an arc, right? An ARK arc. We're on a boat.
We are. And we are the vessel transporting our soul through this life. So we got to stay as whole as we can by making good choices for all of the man or woman that we stand as the one and only version of us who can command the hand with a pen that will allow us to correct the pandemic and whatever else has been off course for long enough. So thank you, Rosemary, for showing up and ending the war, for humanity's consciousness, by actually being kind and bringing mankind back to the forefront.
Thank you.
Peace.